Welcome back to Biggest Little Victory. We are having the second episode of the week. So if you didn't already catch yesterday's episode, please go check that out. We had Lewis back on for the podcast. It was a part 2, just going over some of those verses again, and also just breaking down stereotypes about Christians and pastors and what it actually means to be a Christian. And I know that was kind of how we started this podcast, but so what? We are allowed to come back to things whenever we want to. So check that out if you haven't already. Continue to keep checking us out on Facebook, but Kendra is going to let us know all those. So Kendra, please let us know what is good in the hood.
All right, everybody. So like us on Facebook at Victory Christian Fellowship. Follow us on Instagram at VCF Reno and YouTube, VCF Reno. Follow the podcast on Twitter at BLV Podcast. Every morning we have Zoom meetings, fellowship meetings that are just so incredible. Every night we have live devotionals at 7:30, and Rhiannon switched her Bible studies from every night to just Thursday night at 6 p.m. And there's still prayer meetings, but those are going to be sent out intermittently. So all of those Zoom meeting links will be posted on our Facebook every morning. About 7:30ish is when they post them. So all those Zoom links are there. Join us for those awesome fellowship meetings. Oh, and men's fellowship on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. Sorry, I missed that one. But if you have not listened to this week's sermon, turn this off right now and go listen to that sermon. Go listen to that sermon for multiple reasons. 1, powerful. 2, passionate. 3, the song at the end of the sermon is sang and written by my Uncle Stevie, and it was the most incredible thing to hear it again. Like, it was, when it started playing, I thought my phone was playing something in the background, like an ad or something, and then I started really listening to it, and I sat there, and I'm like, I know this song. What is this song?
Somehow this is familiar.
Right, and then Dad stops talking, and then my Uncle Stevie starts singing, and I know all the words. Like, I was so taken aback to hear that song again. I haven't heard it since like 2012. And so it was incredible. The sermon was incredible. The song afterwards is incredible. Go listen to that sermon and then come back and visit us if you haven't listened to that yet. Please, okay, out on YouTube at VCF Reno. I think we're halting the podcasts of the sermons at the present time. Is that right? Because I couldn't find them.
I honestly have no idea if that's been happening. I don't know if that's my fault or what.
No, I don't know. I don't think it's anybody's fault. I'm not trying to call you out or anything, man. We'll talk about that later. Point is that on YouTube at VCF Reno, go look at it. It's incredible. You're in for a treat. This is going to be a really, really great discussion.
Yeah, so on that note, we have a few different excerpts, and through the magic of editing...
You want to read the Bible verse first?
We will read the Bible verse.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Good catch.
Didn't really talk about format.
That's okay. Good catch. So, everybody, welcome to episode 11.
We have quarantine brains.
We have quarantine brains. Oh, my goodness. We're honestly just so excited to be recording this in the same room, because this has been on Zoom, and when you hear the other podcast or the other episode from yesterday, it was recorded through a different program, and it sounded like everyone was on a phone call, and so we're just so excited to be actually in the same room again. So yeah, we've just got quarantine brain. It's kind of crazy, but yes. So we've. Yes.
Just to clarify, we're not in the same room right now together. We're on Zoom, but we were just talking about how excited we were to be in the same room together.
Yes.
No,
good clarification. I like that.
Yep.
So we have the verse. We have one verse this week, so we're going to read that, and then we're going to go through the 3 different excerpts. We tried to figure out which one we liked the best, but through the magic of editing, we did this before you hearing our voices. Amazing. And we decided that we like all of them. So we are going to play all of them, but not all at once. We're going to break them down and play one, talk about it, play the next one, and it should be a really fun time. We're really excited for this episode. So, without further ado, we're going to get into it. It is Matthew chapter 21, verses 12 through 17. I'm going to be reading out of the New Century Version again. It seems to be my go-to. And follow along if you want, or just sit back and listen. Jesus went into the temple and threw out all the people who were buying and selling there. He turned over the tables of those who were exchanging different kinds of money, and he upset the benches of those who were selling doves. Jesus said to all the people there, "It is written in the scriptures, 'My temple will be called a house for prayer,' but you are changing it into a hideout for robbers." The blind and the crippled people came to Jesus in the temple, and he healed them. The leading priests and the teachers of the law saw that Jesus was doing wonderful things, and that the children were praising him in the temple, saying, "Praise to the Son of David." All these things made the priests and the teachers of the law very angry. They asked Jesus, "Do you hear these things children are saying?" Jesus answered, "Yes. Haven't you read in the scriptures, 'You have taught children and babies to sing praises'?" Then Jesus left and went out to the city of Bethany, where he spent the night. So that is Matthew chapter 21, verses 12 through 17. Just right off the bat there, I love that. They're just like, do you hear what these children are saying? And Jesus is just like, "Yes, I do." I know exactly what they're saying. Don't worry about it. All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to play the first clip here. This one I titled "That Connection is Needed." And it's just going to kind of lead me into how I took notes. But anyway, here we go.
We live in a time where there is so much bad news and so much chaos and so many things that can cause us anxiety or angst or discontent. And it's all coming at us like it's coming out of a fire hose. And this causes so much of the anxiety that we feel and we struggle with. And we've never needed connection more in our lives than we need it right now.
All right, so I really like that one, especially towards the end. By the way, these excerpts are by no means a get-out-of-jail-free card for you not going and checking out the podcast. That is not allowed. Not at all allowed. So these are just a taste of it. You need to hear the whole thing.
Yes.
So directly just from that, I love that it's like everything's coming at us like a fire hose. It seriously feels like that so much.
Well, it gives you a visual and makes you kind of feel it even, I've never been hit with a fire hose before, but I can imagine what it feels like.
Yeah, no, and honestly, the world feels like that. It feels like a fire hose sometimes. Like there's one problem that you're dealing with, and then suddenly another 5 problems come along, and then it seems like it just keeps multiplying because then there's 20 problems, and it feels like you never get a chance to really take a break or step away. And so he asked the big question that he asked was, have you ever felt disconnected from God? So when I went through this, yes. First of all, yes. When I went through this and I was thinking about it and just kind of had that in the back of my mind as I was taking notes, and I'm thinking, when have I felt disconnected from God? Multiple times, and for multiple reasons. It hasn't ever just been one single thing. It wasn't always just a bad reason, but it also wasn't just good reasons. It was good and bad reasons. Like sometimes I was disconnected because I was too focused on the good things that were happening in life and that my life was okay and everything is fine. And so as a result, I kind of started not paying attention to God as much because I guess I felt like at the time I didn't need him as much. And then as a result of that, I felt disconnected from him, that I was no longer in tune. I was no longer in sync with the Spirit, and I was no longer keeping step with the Spirit. And the same has happened when I've hit really, really terrible situations and blamed God for them, blamed God for what I was going through. And later, looking back on it, realizing, no, that wasn't God's fault. That sometimes life just sucks. But in blaming God and trying to just say, this is your fault, I don't know why you're making me go through this, I walk away and end up later on realizing just how different my life becomes. Honestly, it changes my entire outlook on life, and it changes my demeanor throughout the day when I walk away from God. And I notice that I've walked away from God when I've just become more cynical, more skeptical about his presence, and that all goes away when I refocus and reconnect.
That's a good point. Because it is kind of hard to remember to talk to God in most situations, because it's something stressful is happening at work. You're not thinking about talking to God. So it is important to just take a step and be like, you know what? I'm just going to talk to you for a second, and then I'm going to go on and bring you back into it, and we'll see what happens from there. And most of the time it works. And I think that's great. So the way I look at it is, obviously I felt disconnected from God, but I also kind of look at it, I compare my relationship with God with all of my other relationships in life. Not in the same importance, of course, but relationships with my friends or relationships with my husband. There's times where I'm sitting here and I'm looking at them and I'm like, why? Like why
Yeah.
why are we even here? Not just I say that I said my husband, but and it's very rare that that happens. Like I'm happy before anybody hears that wrong. So uh but there's those times where you're just, especially when you're just in a mood, you don't want to talk to anybody. The last thing that you want to do is coexist with someone. And you just have to realize that even if you don't want to coexist with God, fine, he'll coexist with you. And when you're ready, he's there.
That's
And
so true.
that's how it is in, I think, all of the close relationships that we have. My Dustin, I'll be like, I just need you to go in the garage. I just need you to go in the garage and do not come in for like 20 minutes. just give me 20 minutes, because I don't want to deal with him. And it's not because of anything he's doing. It's just because of the mood I'm in, or it could be something he's doing. And the most important thing to do is to just walk away from it. And I think sometimes that it takes that walking away from it to bring you back to it and realize how much you need it.
Mhm.
So, yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
I like that the walking away, because yeah, I think that's honestly, it's kind of like the phrase, you never know what you got till it's gone. So you step away from God, and then you realize just how much you miss him and just how much he means to you, and you're like, oh man, I wish I hadn't walked away. That's kind of too bad. I wish I had valued what I had before I got distracted by something else. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I think you're right. There's even times where you just need to stop. I don't know that I've ever felt that I needed to stop with God. There's definitely times I've had that with people, where I just needed to, like, not right now. Like, please just leave me alone. Let me calm down. Had a horrible day. I don't know that I've ever felt that with God, that I needed to step away from Him. But there have just been times where my my mood or whatever was going on, I then turned that into walking away from God as well as everyone else. Like, I just completely separated myself. But I think,
Right. But there have been times when those things have happened and you haven't reached out to God.
yes,
So you're not
yep,
bringing God in at the
right.
same time.
That's true. Yeah. So your point though about stepping away and coming back actually perfectly leads me into, like, where my brain was going with all this was what helps you reconnect. And so you said for you, like, it can help stepping away, it can help just taking that break and understanding what it means to you, or even not necessarily what it means to you, because you don't always forget that, but sometimes just taking that break can help you to calm down and come
Yes.
back to it that way. Right. So
Yeah.
it's not always
And
that
I
you
mean,
stop
it's also,
appreciating.
yeah, it's also a personality thing. Like a lot of personalities are more than willing to sit there and just talk it out. But differing personalities, like me, I'm that personality, or I'm the one who's like, come talk to me, let's communicate here. Dustin is the one who reacts differently. And so I think that because I always I should say I used to be that communicative one, but now, like, I've had to learn his way of coping and
Mhm.
dealing with things, to the point where I know that the best thing to do is to just walk away.
Right.
So that's a little different. And so I think it's very, very dependent on personalities. And obviously God has all of the personalities, I'm sure. So he's more than willing to work with you, more than you're willing to work with him, I think, is the point that I was getting at.
No, I got that. Yeah. I think with people, it is different. You have to learn how everyone handles things. Because for me, for instance, if I'm just in a bad mood or like I'm upset, like I need time to think it out. I need time to like stop and think, because I won't have a response right then and there. I don't have quick responses. So I need time to actually just think about what I'm wanting to say. And as a result, that means I need sometimes an hour or more to really just understand like what I'm feeling, and then be able to accurately talk about it. But some people are able to talk about it right away. Some people are able to say, no, I want to talk about this right now. I know exactly what I want to say, and I want to get this over with so I can move on with my day. And yeah, it definitely requires knowing each other and being able to compromise within that.
Right. And but it's important to remember that even if you don't feel like talking, God's there with a hand on your shoulder, just waiting for you to be ready.
Yeah, so sometimes it's kind of like what we talked about in the last episode with Lewis, that sometimes you don't always need to come with words. Sometimes it's not always about talking. Sometimes it's just about the presence. Sometimes it's just about being there for the person and them knowing that. Yeah, and so going off that, like what reconnects me with God at least is honestly getting away from civilization. It's when I'm able to go hiking or camping, especially. I really love camping. But even if I can't do those things, like if I can't always go off onto a trail or go camping, then it's sometimes it's even just shaking up my routine, like whatever it takes. If this is what I always do at this time, maybe I don't this time, and instead just spend some time in silence, not do anything, not be looking at my phone, not the computer. Maybe I'm just sitting in a chair, looking out the window, watching people. Like it's just something that gets me out of my routine. Something about that, I don't know what it is, but something about that just makes me able to reconnect with God better. And that's kind of those tools that I use. But if I do have the chance to go hiking or camping, then I definitely take those when I can.
Yeah, that's a good one. I wish I was more outdoorsy. Like I was outside for about an hour on Sunday, and I was like, it's too hot, I'm going inside.
That's enough. I've gotten my vitamin D.
Right. Well, it's funny because I like if we go camping, I love going camping,
Yeah.
but I have to leave my house in order to be outside. When I'm at home, I want to be at home. I don't want to be, yeah. So anyway, mine is definitely reading. I've been reading a lot of faith-driven books lately.
Yeah.
And so that has brought me, I haven't strayed from God in the past year and a half. So I've definitely asked him why a couple times, and I've reached out to figure out, what can I do what can I read or what can I look to help me get through this in a faith-driven way. And so that's kind of brought me back. But what really, really brought me back and reconnecting was going to church. That was really what it was. I started going just as a support for Dad, and then I ended up catching on fire. I ended up having, in the wise words of Pastor David, I ended up having heart surgery. And so I think that going to church is going to be really, really nice, because it'll be easier to reconnect. Now it's like I have all this time on my hands, and sometimes the last thing I want to do is read some dry scripture-driven book, and as terrible as that sounds coming out of a pastor's mouth, scripture can get dry, man. So it's like reading a dissertation sometimes. Not everybody can focus in on it, so because that's what going to church did to me. And the live devotionals and the fellowship meeting in the morning has helped me a lot, because even like on one of the questions from yesterday's fellowship meeting was, what did you think of the sermon? And I hadn't watched it yet. I didn't watch the sermon until today. And so even though I know that going to church helps me, I'm not doing my part to make sure to watch church on Sunday morning when it's meant to be watched.
Gotcha.
And I had to think about that really hard today. I thought about it a lot, because I'm sitting here and I'm like, aren't you supposed to be on this walk? Aren't you supposed to be on this adventure? of, becoming a pastor.
Right.
And, I feel like I'm faltering in that. So I'm not disconnecting at all right now. That's not at all what it is. I still do my prayers. I still go to fellowship meetings. I still watch the Lives devotionals. But for some reason, Sunday is becoming lazy day for me. And I kind of need church as a reason to leave my house. So I'm really looking forward to doing that again.
I was going to say, how excited are you for church to be back physically?
Mm. I'm very excited. I'm ecstatic. And I don't want it to be too soon. Of course,
Right.
The health of our family is way more important than me wanting to see them. So because if they get sick, then I'll never see them again. So
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
not at all what I want, and I hope that we open in a timely, professional manner, which I know we will. But dang, can I not wait for it?
Yeah. No, seriously. All right, so we're going to move on with the next little clip. So this one is much more impassioned, but you will very much see why. This is just about David talking about our connecting with God, not just the first one was a little bit more about why we need a connection, and then this one is kind of how we see it and the truth of it. So here we go.
We have criteria for connecting with God. We have to feel something to believe we are connecting with God. That is nothing more than a lie. You have a connection with God, period. In the midst of all the chaos and all the condemnation and the anxiety, we have a connection with God. But we keep telling ourselves that our checklist for connection hasn't been complete for me to be able to connect to God. We always want to argue with God about why he's forsaking us. The truth is he turned his back on his son so he could turn his face towards us.
So that, by far, is one of the most impassioned statements that I've heard in quite some time now. But I love it because of its truthfulness. Just especially that ending part, that's what hits me, is the turning away from God. Like, Jesus became sin so that we could be saved. Jesus became, or he took on that burden for us. He became the ugliness of sin so that we didn't have to pay for that punishment. It is insane just thinking about that and really understanding that, and just to stop and think about what that really means for us in our daily lives. But I really love that. But yeah, it's so true that there have been so many times where my connection with God seemed like it was dependent upon how I felt, which is not at all how the connection works. It's not based on whether or not you feel he's close that day. It's actually just based on the fact that he's there, and how often are you spending time with him. And there was a pastor that was feeling like he wasn't connecting with God, and he was just starting out in his ministry, and he went to his mentor and said, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I just don't feel like I'm connecting with God. I feel like all the songs don't really mean anything to me anymore. And so his mentor said, well, how about this? For the next year, don't expect anything. Just go to church. Don't expect to feel anything from the scripture reading, from the songs, from the sermon. Just go and get what you can from it. Take the notes and just be there with the people, and don't worry so much about whether or not you feel something in that moment. And so the pastor kind of said, okay, I'll try it. And so for a year, he said it was the hardest year of his life because he didn't feel anything for like a year. None of the songs made him cry. Nothing made him tear up or sad or feel impassioned to go change the world or anything like that. It just felt like almost like lectures, like going through college again. But after the end of that year, it was just a regular sermon. It wasn't on a special day. It wasn't like Easter or Christmas. It's just kind of a regular Sunday. And there was a song that was played, and for whatever reason, despite the fact that he'd heard that song so many times before, this time it hit, and it really, really registered in a way that he had never felt before. And it was just kind of that clarification to him that it's not about feeling, it's not about emotion, it's not like happiness, which is fleeting. It was so much more than that, so much deeper than that.
Well, that just also shows that God is patient. He's all, I'm going to show you this song a million times, but I am going to, there's going to be that one time soon where it hits just right and you'll feel me and I'll be there.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that he's always been there. It's just a matter of opening up yourself and willing to find him, to feel him.
Did you get anything special from this one?
Yeah, fear. I told Steven before we started recording that every time I heard that voice growing up, I thought I did something wrong, because that's a impassioned man, and when he was mad at me, yeah, he was passionate.
Was it the middle name complex? Like once you heard the middle name, that's when you knew?
No, it was mainly first name, because he calls me Monkey. So if he does not call me Monkey, I'm in trouble. My middle name is a very comforting thing for us. It's not
Gotcha.
anything that invokes fear. So thank goodness for that. Thank God for that. But
right.
No, I think it's just important to always remember that. Always remember why Jesus did this. And he goes into it a little bit more in the sermon, which you guys should all go listen to if you haven't already. That right before his arrest, him and his followers, he's like, I need to get away from the chaos and just leave, pray for me while I do this. And then they kept falling asleep, and so he sat there after that and said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this, God. And he says, it's what must be done, so all of my future children can thrive and live free of sin. And it's important to remember that, because Jesus did not want to do this. He did not. He was frightened. Of course he was frightened. He knew that he was going to die.
Right.
He knew that he was going to die in one of the worst ways possible. And he was frightened. And that right there shows me that, because Dad said, just because he's a spirit who put on skin and bones, that shows that he was frightened in that moment. That shows that he was human.
That's very true.
Because I don't think any of us would just go do this willingly with no care in the world. No care in the world.
Right, to not even think twice about the fact that you're not just laying your life down. It's not like firing squad or something, it's not instant. Like, this is going to hurt. And it's going to hurt in more ways than one. It's going to be physically and emotionally very, very painful, because you're going to
and it's not going to be quick. And it's,
no. And you're going to have everyone reject you. You're going to have people chanting for your death. Yeah, it's going to be...
It'll be very public. Oh my gosh, I can't even. Nope, count me out. So, I mean, the fact that he was frightened to do it is really what kind of got me from that, because Pastor David says it perfectly in the sermon. Jesus was a human at one point. Jesus was a human. He felt fear. He felt things that we feel, that, sometimes you feel like he may not even know what we're feeling.
Right.
So even if you don't think that God knows what you're going through, Jesus does. And I think that that's very important.
Well, and I love the humanization of Jesus because of that it's more than just, it'd be one thing if it's just a story about this very powerful Son of God coming down to earth, showing everybody how to live and just condemning all the people for the ones who are doing it wrong and teaching others to do it wrong, and having this very authoritative position in life, versus the fact that what we get is, we do get some of that. We do get some of his authoritative stances, but we also get this very human Jesus that you see his emotion. You see how much he loves and cares for people, and you see how much it hurts. And that's what I just really love, that humanization of it, that it makes it so personal. Because if it was just an authoritative figure, it would still have the same power, but I don't know if it would register as strongly with me, because of it being an authoritative figure. Like, it would almost seem like it was too easy, that if he just died, there was no pain, there was no public rejection, that, he just died and that was it, and that was the end of it. I don't know that it would have as much power as the fact that he was crying, he was in pain, he was even on the cross telling John to take care of his mom for him because he wasn't going to be around anymore. Like, he's trying to just reach out to people constantly, even after he's been nailed to this piece of wood naked up front for everyone to see, and he's still trying to pray for people and minister to people through all the pain. I think that is what makes it so powerful for me when I look back and read through the story of his crucifixion and death, is just the fact that he went through so much to be there for us, to be there for the people in that time, but also to take care of people for all time. I think that's what is so awesome.
It is. And really, quite frankly, Stephen and I can't put it into words better than Pastor David did.
No.
Um,
No.
So if we seem a little lost at a little lost for words, I think we're doing fine. But really, quite frankly, Pastor David nailed it. This was really, quite frankly, one of the most impassioned that I've ever seen him, even when I did get in trouble in high school. So I think that really, at the end of the day, he said it best at the end, that he didn't turn his back, but he chose us over his son for a reason. There was a reason. It's not just as cut and dry as that.
Right.
But this must be done. This must be done. And I'm sorry, you're going to hurt. You're going to be humiliated. And what you're about to go through is not anything that I would want anybody to go through. But you got to do it because this is what's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, we've said it several times already, but definitely you have to check this sermon out.
You really, really do. And
to hear it for yourself.
It's one of the most impactful sermons that I've heard in my new walk. And I've watched quite a few on the interwebs from just local churches just to see. And it's incredible, really. And I'm not just saying that because he's my dad or our pastor. It's a thing, it's incredible.
It's very kind of upfront biblical truth told through a very passionate lens. Like you said, it's not a dry Bible reading. It's it's an impassioned retelling, I guess you could say, of the story. And it really, really brings it to life. And that's what makes it so, so awesome, is that it isn't just a monotone voice reading through it and saying, okay, that's it, and walk away. But it is taking it and putting it into today's perspective, putting it into our current perspective, and putting it into future perspectives. Honestly, I believe it really can speak to anyone regardless of where they are, because all these points that he's making about feeling disconnected and how do we reconnect, and about guilt and shame, and we're going to play this next excerpt in a second about that, about guilt and shame. But all
which
these
we
things,
all feel.
Which we all feel.
It's terrible. I hate feeling shame. Like, just as a disclaimer, feeling shame is, quite frankly, the worst thing that I've ever felt.
It's honestly the
reason... Go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just going to say, it's honestly the reason why people will just not apologize. They do something wrong, and you get those people that they do something wrong and then they just don't say anything and they just kind of walk away because they don't want to be embarrassed. They hate the way that shame makes you feel. You would rather walk away than feel like that.
Right. But the best thing is owning up to that shame, and you feel way better.
It's so much better.
Way better than just walking away from it. Let me tell you, like, if I had the courage to walk away and just admit when I was wrong back in high school like I do now, I would have been way more popular.
All right, we're going to play this last clip here. This is on shame and condemnation and just kind of how we see the topics.
God does not use shame. Shame and guilt are not tools that the Creator uses to reach us. Shame and condemnation always leads us back to the thing that caused it in the first place. We end up saying, to heck with it, I already did it once.
Yeah, so shame only brings us back to the beginning. It just goes in circles. Shame will just lead you over and over again into a spiral, honestly, of feeling like you're not good enough, feeling like you don't know how to do this anymore. Like shame just puts you in the mud. Like you just get stuck. You get stuck in this idea that everything that you do is wrong, and you don't want to admit to it. And anytime that you try to get out of it the shame and the condemnation that you feel from having done something wrong, it's like it just grabs you and doesn't let go. And if you're focusing on the voices of shame and condemnation, then you're not listening on the voices of Jesus. You're not listening on the voices of God that have told you that you don't need to feel that way anymore. You don't need to feel shame. You don't need to feel condemned anymore, because he has fixed that. His death on the cross is so that we don't have to feel shame anymore, that when we mess up, we don't have to stick in that and say, well, I guess I got caught for lying. Now I'm just a liar. And walking with that weight, that the whole point of what he did on the cross was so that we don't have to walk with that weight anymore, that we get to be free of that. We get to leave that at the altar and say, okay, this is who I was. This is what I did. I'm done with that.
Right. And when you just walk away from your shame and you don't do anything about it, you become numb to it, to the point where every time you do it, you become more and more numb, to the point where you just stop caring altogether.
Yes.
And so I think it's important to embrace the shame and really, really just, okay, this happened. I'm sorry that I did that. And I promise to never do it again. And as long as you don't do it again, you'll feel way, way, way better.
I completely agree. It's not a tool of God. It's not a way that God uses to connect us, because what kind of a relationship is it if there's someone that's making you feel guilty for what you have or have not done? That's called abuse. It is what they would call an abusive relationship. It's emotional manipulation to get you to do things that makes the other person not necessarily happy, but just agreeable. That's not a relationship. A true loving relationship is one that isn't built on that. It's built on freedom and built on love. It's not built on making you do something in order to prevent that person's wrath.
Right. And guilt is harder to get rid of than shame, I think, because guilt, even if you do admit guilt, you still have to live with the guilt.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that they're kind of like cousins, guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Because I felt shameful a lot in my life, but I don't really dwell on those after I've admitted fault. I don't really feel shame anymore, but I definitely feel guilt. And like some things, smaller things, I don't really feel that anymore, but there are some things that I've done where I just sit here and I'm like, hey, remember that really embarrassing and terrible thing that you did 15 years ago? Let's think about that for the next couple days.
I've had that too.
And so I think that it's a like, if guilt and shame had a baby, like I don't even know how to combine those two words.
Right.
Shilt.
I was gonna say, careful which way you you could say game, I guess, but that doesn't make any sense.
No, I like shilt.
That's great.
Because that's what brings you back to those. Yeah. To those memories, to those terrible memories. Are those two feelings? Is either shame or it's guilt or it's both. It's shilt.
And that by far is the ugliest baby you will ever see. real ugly baby. Oh man. I just love this sermon in the way that it just points out so many truths about how we think the relationship with God works, and then how it actually works, and how he is actually fighting for us, not just how we think he is. And that to me is it's such a powerful truth, because we have this idea of how God operates and how he thinks, and his ways are not our ways and his thoughts are not our thoughts. And so when we see this idea that he operates in a completely different way than we would expect, especially for Jesus to do what he did, that's not what any of us would have as our plan. Like if we were the ones in God's seat and we'd sent our son down to earth to save humanity, I don't know that any human would willingly just say, yeah, and I'm going to have my son die on a cross after everybody rejects him, and he's just going to be suffering and taking on the punishment for the sins for these people. That's how I'm going to do it. I don't know that anyone alive would have that kind of a plan for their own child. And if so, that's a scary parent. But this
Yes.
was this was God's plan. This is what he wanted. He knew what was going to happen. Jesus knew what was going to happen. He knew what was expected of him. He felt the fear of it in that moment because it's terrifying to have to willingly do this. But he and the Father both went through anyway and did this for us just so that we could have lives free of shilt.
Hit me up, Webster's.
So the last one I wanted to ask was, what has God done to grab your attention? And for me, there's several different things that have happened. Some of them physical. One, just my life, my upbringing has just been a direct influence of God. The kind of family life that I had was just so loving and so focused on God and so focused on I don't want to just say security, but just focused on, I had a safe place to go. Like home was a safe place for me. And the more I grew up, the more I realized a lot of my friends didn't have the same thing. They didn't have home as a safe place. Home was scary. And they would rather be at school or with their friends somewhere else because home was just a scary place. So I definitely credit having that as some way that God has got my attention. When I think back to that, when I think back to how I was raised, and other times where that's happened has been like when I was almost T-boned in an intersection. There should have been the car that came through from the left side. He should have hit my driver's door. Like he should have hit it hard. I should have been in the hospital, honestly, from what happened because of how fast he was traveling, and somehow he didn't make contact with my car at all. It didn't make any sense. He was like a foot, it looked like he was a foot away from my car door, and somehow he didn't hit me. So I don't understand that at all. But there's honestly the biggest way that he has grabbed my attention has been going back through my old journals that I would take on Sunday mornings or whenever someone was speaking. There were these journals that I would just kind of, it wasn't necessarily like doodling, but I wouldn't take notes verbatim from what the pastor said, or when he said, take note of this. I wouldn't always take note of that. Sometimes I would just kind of start out with what he was saying, and I would let my mind jump off from there, and I would think of verses that related to what the pastor was talking about. And it sounds egotistical to say this, but it honestly wasn't. It wasn't me at all, because when I go back through these journals, I just see so much truth and so much biblical truth and inspiration that I looking through these, I know that this is not like, oh yeah, I was a pretty smart guy. I look back through those journals, I'm like, wow, God really spoke to me through these messages. Like I really heard him, because as I'm reading this, I'm like, this doesn't sound like me. This sounds so amazing. I love these words. I love this what God is teaching me, even through what I wrote down. Like that has been the biggest evidence of his hand in my life. So I wanted to ask you the same thing, Kendra. What has God done that's kind of grabbed your attention?
He has swapped people. When I was younger, I wasn't really hanging out with the best crowd, doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. But to be fair, I didn't grow up as a pastor's daughter. I'm a pastor's daughter now, but my dad didn't
Right.
become a pastor until I was pretty much an adult. So there's that. But and my childhood was great. Before anybody misinterprets this, I made all these choices myself to who I was hanging out with. But he put people in front of me that made me see that I didn't need these people over here who were taking me down this road that I probably wouldn't have been able to come back from, with people who love God and are more than willing to, and even if they don't love God, they're just pure and they're kind, and they're not as, here, do this shot with me, even though you're about to vomit. So these people are like, hey, maybe you shouldn't take it because you're about to vomit. So
that's one step above the holding your hair for you. That's
right.
Let's just stop this
So,
before we get to that point.
right, but and then back to that, the former people would be like, oh, you got vomit in your hair, sorry about that. These people would be like, let me hold your hair, not saying that I
Right.
drink with my Christian friends. It's not at all
Right.
what we're saying. It's a bad analogy on my part, but really what it was is that he took those bad people out of my life. And even if it was very, very harmful how they exited and how they just attacked me on their way out,
Yeah.
that doesn't matter right now or anymore at all, because I have these people in my life right now that are pure, but they also have the same sense of humor as I do, to the point where we can laugh and even not have a little bit of non-Christian moments. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
it's important, because the people are what God puts in your life to show you that, hey, I exist, and I exist with you and these people. And this is who I think you should be hanging around with, and I'm going to show you why.
I think that it's so cool when you find the right people too, because
Mm-hmm.
it really does change your ability to go through life when you have the right people backing you up. Because as strong as any of us is on our own, it is nothing compared to when you have a community of people working with you and supporting you and having your back, honestly, in times when you don't even expect them to have your back. Well, not so much that. That's not the right way I wanted to phrase that. But like, they get your back in ways that you don't expect, is kind of how I was trying to say that. Like, oh, I know that you support me. I know that you're there for me. If I need a place to stay, you'll be there. I got it. But then suddenly they do something that you didn't even ask for or expect, and you're like, wow, that was really awesome of them. But yeah, it's amazing when you get the right people in your life, what that can do to your outlook and your ability to get through really anything.
Right. And then when those people do enter your life, even if you're not a Christian, who do you thank for that?
Yeah,
Who do you
God.
thank for that? You thank God for that.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
even, and if you are a Christian and you're taking the same walk as you and I are taking right now, that we see God in those people's eyes.
Absolutely.
We don't know what God looks like. We don't know what he looks like physically. He looks like all of those people who surround you
Yeah,
in his light.
without question, without
Yep.
hesitation, they're just there, and
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing. And yeah,
Yep.
and that's exactly the portrait of God, is that he's just there whenever you need him. He's there.
It's the point. He's your best friend. He's your most reliable companion. Yeah, he probably can't hold your hair if you're getting sick at a party. Okay, like, let's just be real here. But
There may
he
be some different
most
choices.
definitely, yeah, he can help you through the next morning. And when you ask yourself, why did I do this to myself? He will help
Right.
you through that part at least.
So to wrap up here, I wanted you to have a chance to share your victory that you have been wanting to share for so long now.
Yay! I'm so happy you remembered, because I forgot. So, if you are a member of our church family, you've followed Mariah, our dear beloved Mariah, throughout her entire walk. She got baptized at BCF and about 10 months ago, and she just had a baby, little Miss Peyton May. She's been hoping for a girl. She has 2 boys, so her and her husband tried for a girl, and they finally got one. And they asked me to be the godmother, and they asked Dustin to be the godfather. They asked us to be godparents, and it is by far the greatest thing. The only thing that I'm not trying to dampen my own victory here, but I haven't been able to meet her because of this dang quarantine. I
It's the
haven't been
worst.
able to meet, and she's like she's a month and a week old now, and I haven't been able to meet her. And so I cannot wait. I'm about to go do a distance meeting. Like, keep the door closed, like the screen door closed, and I'll stand on the porch, you stand inside, and I'll meet her from there. But man. So Dustin and I are officially godparents. I don't know if we're doing like the whole legal thing, but spiritual godparents as of right now, and we're really excited about it.
It's so awesome.
Yay!
I love that. I love that. That's so cool. Even if I have to be on the porch, I have to see this child.
I was supposed to be there when she was born.
Ah, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I couldn't be there. So it was like when Mariah went into labor, I'd like fought with myself. Like, you can't even go into the hospital room. There's no point in or you can't even be in the waiting room. There's no point in going to the hospital right now. But I fought with actually just trying to see.
Right. Right. Well, that is awesome. Congratulations
Yes.
to you and
Thank you.
Dustin. I'm sure he's loving the fact that he's the godfather.
I don't think he feels any different.
I was making a reference to the movie, but maybe not.
Oh gosh. So my dad would be very, very disappointed. So this will be a test to see if dad actually listens to this. I don't know The Godfather that well. I've seen it once, and I have not seen any other parts except for the first one. So,
Gotcha. All right.
yeah.
Well, either way, anyway, that's
All
really
right.
cool.
If you've reached it this far without going and listening to Pastor David's sermon, you did it backwards, but it's not too late. Go listen to Pastor David's sermon from Sunday. It is a must hear. It is mwah, Italian kiss perfection. So if you haven't done that yet, do it, and then maybe come back and revisit us, and then you'll probably understand what we're saying a little bit more. Not that what we say is not understandable, but you never know.
It just puts it on a different light when you hear the real deal, and then you come and hear the explanation. Then it kind of makes more sense. So
right,
yeah,
right. We're like Cliff Notes. Okay, you get the gist, but you don't get the most.
Yeah, those excerpts, like I said, by no means are a replacement for the sermon itself. You have to go hear it yourself. So if like we said, check us out on Facebook. We'll have all of the updates, as Kendra mentioned at the beginning, that some of the devotionals and things are moving around and changing what days. So pay attention to that. You'll see all the links and all the times are on the Facebook page. So that's the best way to stay up with us. But you can keep up with the podcast as well on Twitter. And you can also follow us on other platforms like Instagram and YouTube. And that's where we'll be posting the sermons and these podcasts as well. And yeah, we're really excited.
Also,
go.
Sorry, go ahead.
Nope.
I didn't
have anything. I was saying also that we are going to have some new content in the future that I'm not going to disclose just yet, but we're really excited for it because it's going to be a whole different train of thought. But yes, go ahead.
It will be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah.
So we are doing the 4D challenge for our good friend Darren. If you haven't watched it yet, Pastor David and John Riggs shaved their heads on Facebook Live on Sunday. Dad about midday, John in the evening, for the 4D challenge. John Riggs challenged my husband. I shaved my husband's head on live television or on live Facebook last night, and we got to donate all of his curls, which was awesome. So I'm really excited about that. But while we were recording this, Matt Deming did his. And so he challenged someone else. So for the rest of the week, we're doing the 4D challenge where somebody is going to be shaving their head on Facebook Live for our good friend Darren, who starts chemotherapy on Friday. So if you're listening to this and you are taking prayer requests, please pray for Darren. Huge thing. Everything's going smoothly so far, so good, but prayers and prayers and prayers and prayers. And also, I don't know if anybody knows, I'm sure most of our church knows who this is, but our good friend Gary Gavica, he went in for a kidney transplant this morning. He got a kidney. So
that's awesome.
Yes. So he's been on a list for quite some time. He's needed a kidney for a really long time, and he finally got one. His wife posted on Facebook a couple hours ago saying that the surgery went great. We just got to continue to pray that it takes and that he can finally go back to being good old Gary, because he is just the most amazing human being. So praises. Those are some praises for the end of this. I just wanted to end on that note.
No, that's super cool. I love it. I guess I better go check my Facebook to see if I've been challenged yet or not.
I think that everybody knew if they were going to be challenged before they got challenged. So I think you're safe if you don't already know. But if you're willing, let Dad know and he'll hook it up. But anyway, so if that's it, I think that we're gonna say goodbye here.
Yep, that's it. That's all I have. Once again, check out the sermon if you've missed it. And then also check out our podcast episode yesterday if you missed it. That was the part 2 with Lewis. It was kind of based on last week's sermon, but it actually relates to this week's as well. So that's bonus content to just further dive into this subject.
Well, delve in is a thing, so it kind of worked.
I don't know if that was... Anyway. Me and my grammar, I'm like, that's not grammatically correct. Either way, we have bonus content this week because we had a second episode. So check it all out. We are just rocking and rolling with all this, and we're really excited to be sharing all this with you. And we will look forward to seeing you next week.
Absolutely. Prayers and love, everybody.